You were the weird kid, too quiet, too loud, too intense, too sensitive. You daydreamed, you fixated, you melted down, you lit up. And they told you, try harder, toughen up, fit in, be normal. But what if you were never broken? What if you were just wired for something the world couldn't quite see yet? What if you were autistic or neurodivergent and no one had the words for it? Maybe you weren't failing. Maybe you were becoming a quiet rebel. If you're Gen X, you probably grew up in a world where autism or neurodivergence looked one very specific way. Boys were non-verbal, Rain Man type things, and if you weren't that, you didn't qualify. Girls, artists, dreamers, you were moody, overly sensitive, daydreaming again. You got labelled but never supported. We grew up undiagnosed and mislabelled, gifted, lazy, anxious, dramatic, but never seen. So we survived quietly. We copied others and became masters of the mask. But even then, a quiet part of us was already building a secret world. You learned how to pass, smiled when you wanted to run, nod when you didn't understand, worked twice as hard just to seem normal. You hid the shit that you loved. You worked, loved, parented, people pleased, while quietly falling apart inside. Jobs left you exhausted, parties made your skin crawl, unless you were excessively drunk or so high people became bearable again. And no one ever told you why. But somewhere in the margins, you made music, you wrote, you painted, you created, because it was the only place you didn't have to mask. You didn't fit the world, so you started building your own. Then one day, maybe last week, maybe 10 years ago, you heard something. A podcast, a post, a friend's story, and everything clicked. Wait, the shutdowns, the meltdowns, the need to stim, the obsession with fairness or music or deep pressure or silence. You weren't anxious, you were overloaded. You weren't lazy, you were burned out. That wasn't failure, it was sensory survival. There's grief, sure, grief for the years spent performing a role, but also relief, because now it all makes sense. You see, autistic and neurodivergent minds are wired for creativity. We notice patterns, we dive deep, we obsess, invent, repeat, refine. We feel things louder, longer, deeper, and then we turn that into art. Think about it. Some of the most visionary musicians, filmmakers, and writers, they weren't good at life by conventional standards. They were good at turning life into something else. Many of these artists possessed an intense focus, a deep sensitivity, an unconventional way of seeing the world that often made them feel like outsiders. They were often called too much or too weird for the mainstream, but they built entire worlds from their raw truth and unique perspective. They struggled with the demands of a world not built for their minds, but they channeled that friction into profound art. They didn't fit the mold, so they smashed it and made something beautiful from the pieces. Their brilliance wasn't despite their differences, but often because of them. Autism and neurodivergence didn't block your creativity, it was a doorway to it. That deep focus, that hypersensitivity, that oddball imagination, that's not broken, that's brilliance. Think about it, that song that got you through your 20s, that movie that understood you better than your parents. Often those came from minds wired just like yours. So what if you stopped trying to be normal and started building a life that actually works for your brain? A slower rhythm, a smaller world, more silence, fewer obligations, more time to make instead of mask. That isn't laziness. That is rebellion. The kind that doesn't need a stage. The kind that says, I don't need to be fixed. I need to be free. You're not weak. You were never wired for their game. You were never broken. You were just busy becoming something better. If this landed even just a little, if you've ever looked back at your whole life and thought, oh my God, that explains everything, then you're not alone. Not anymore. Perhaps your story isn't about autism, but about ADHD or dyslexia or another neurodivergent path. It doesn't matter what the label is, or if there even is one. If you've ever felt that deep quiet knowing that you were wired differently, and that's precisely where your brilliance lies, then this message is for you. This is for every quiet rebel who decided to stop trying to be normal and start living authentically. This is your space to be who you want to be, who you need to be to make the world sane again. Comment with the moment it clicked for you when you realized you were not broken, just misread, and maybe kind of brilliant all along. And if you're ready to explore what a creative life designed for your brain looks like, you'll want to join the other quiet rebels. You don't need to unmask all at once, but you can stop apologizing straight away. This is your permission to design a life that finally fits you. Not for their comfort, but for your peace. Welcome home. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next week.